What's up, guys? Colton Richardson here, personal injury lawyer here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and former prosecutor. And we've got Alex Murdaugh trial, day 7, day 5 of evidence. And so we will jump right in. Yesterday, I didn't get to watch any of it today, but yesterday we had what the prosecution is saying, testimonial, and we'll jump into that. That Alex Murdaugh admitted to the murders. We'll jump into that. Exactly what did he say? So let's get right into it and start watching the Alex Murdaugh trial, day 5. And again, I have not watched any of it today. Been busy day, but let's start watching. They just did housekeeping right before this, and Dick was being extremely grateful to the judge in the court and saying he's never been treated so well before in a courtroom. And the prosecution had to echo that. Maybe we'll get to the jury coming in.
Hey, good morning. Day number 7, state's case.
Day number 7.
We'll have our witness back.
This witness continues. He's a sled.
Yeah, remind you, you're still under oath. Cross-examination.
Senior special agent with sled.
Good morning, April.
Good morning, sir.
On June 8th, I understood that was your first involvement in this case. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
And you went to Moselle on the morning of the June 8th?
I was en route to Moselle, got rerouted to the office, and then went and conducted an interview, and then back to Moselle.
That's right. You interviewed Rogan Gibson and then went to Moselle.
That is correct.
And what time did you get to Moselle?
I was around lunchtime when I got there.
And as I understood from your testimony, that your role primarily is because in this case is that because you know a lot about guns and ammunition. Did I understand that correctly?
That was not my sole role. I was at the search of the residence because of my familiarity with firearms.
Yes. And you went and searched the residence with other agents, and we saw those agents, some of them, on the body cam video that played yesterday.
Yes, sir. I was in the gun room.
Okay. And this search was a consent search, correct?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
And you weren't there executing a search warrant, right?
No, sir, I was not.
And were you aware, though, that there was a search warrant that had been obtained the night before?
I was aware of the consent, the search at the incident location. It's common practice that they get a search warrant to process the scene.
If we
Yes.
compare his
Were there any limitations
questioning
that you were aware of
to Dick
on the
yesterday,
scope of the consent,
day and night?
the search?
No, sir.
And so, as far as you knew and understood then and understand today, you or other agents at SLED could have searched that house from top to bottom.
I would
on the
hope
8th.
if you
Is
all
that
could
correct?
see it.
Other agents went through the residence with family members.
And there were no limitations on what the other agents could have looked for, right?
Again, I can't say what limitations was placed on them as they walked through the house. I was in the gun room.
Yes, Bonnie, and we're going to listen to that at the end.
Well,
and have
to
a
your
personal
knowledge, did
story
anyone
about that
look
as well?
for bloody clothes or dirty clothes in the house while you were there on the 8th?
I was in the gun room and I was collecting guns and ammunition, sir.
Now you mentioned that you had been provided some information about the type of ammunition that was used down at the crime scene where Maggie and Paul were murdered. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you and one one ammunition was a 300 blackout shell casing. Were you aware of that?
Yes, sir, I was.
And who relayed the information to you as the type of ammo that was used for the murder of Maggie and Paul?
It came from the investigative team. I don't recall exactly who called me or who told me the information.
Could be
but I
hearsay.
was relayed the information through our investigative team that was at the scene.
All right, so you were informed that, look out, see what you can find in the gun room related to 300 blackout.
Prosecutor's standing weird.
It wasn't limited to specifically 300 blackout. That was a round of interest.
Crossing his arms during questioning.
And then the other round of interest was 12 gauge, correct?
That is correct.
And were you given any information as to what specific type of 12 gauge ammunition was used at the crime scene?
I knew we had a 12 gauge, what believed to be a turkey load or BB load, and then a buckshot.
Okay.
Turkey load's a bunch of BBs, and buckshot's one big
And
steel block, pretty much.
talk to you a little bit about the 300 blackout ammunition. You testified yesterday that the grains, the weight of the ammunition found at the house was 147 grains. Is that right?
That is correct. That's what's on the empty box, which I located. And
Is this the empty box, State's Exhibit 213 that you're referring to?
that is correct.
And this, I recall, this pack of ammo on this exhibit has a label of Woody's Pawn and Jewelry and $11.99. You couldn't buy this ammunition in June of 2021 for $11.99, could you?
I don't know what the ammunition cost.
Well, it was a lot more than $11.99.
I don't know the price of the ammunition at that time.
All right. And are you familiar? There's basically two types of ammunition for the 300 blackout. There's the supersonic and subsonic.
I am, sir.
And the subsonic is the heavier of the two, correct?
That is correct.
And that would be a 220 grain. Oh,
Thereabouts, yes, sir.
yes.
This is cross-examination.
And the most popular ammunition for hunting is the supersonic, the 147 grain ammunition. You aware of that?
This is probably all going over the jury's head.
I can't say the most popular would be, but I am aware that 147 grain is used for hunting.
And you're aware that the 300 blackout has
He is.
it's not a rare
sticking to his
gun in
guns,
that area
literally.
of Hampton and Colleton County, is it?
It's not as common as the General 223 or the AR-15, 308, different caliber rifles. It's not as common.
But
I have a two.
there are plenty out there, correct?
I can't testify as to how many's out there, sir.
I understand, but it's not,
What's up, Attorney
it's not the first time
Ryan?
you'd seen the 300 blackout on June 8th,
Look at
2021.
that
It was.
guy.
I had seen one
go.
before, yes, sir.
And and then the 12 gauge, you didn't know what type, you weren't given any type 12 gauge you're looking for. You just, from the information from the crime scene, right?
The type of weapon I was looking for? No,
Yes,
sir. No, sir.
And then were you given information as to the size of the 12 gauge shell? 2.5 inch, 3 inch?
It was, I was given it 3-inch Magnum was what I was given.
I'm trying to
That was on
convince
the
Attorney Ryan to get
buckshot.
on here with me.
I was given 3-inch Magnum of shotgun capable of shooting a 3-inch Magnum.
Okay. Now, and we're gonna get to some of these shotguns here in a minute, but that, the Browning Light doesn't even shoot a 3-inch shell, does it?
It does not. 2 3/4 what it shoots.
Right.
There's
And
a lot
yet
of
you
guns
seized it?
and ammo there.
I secured it, yes, sir.
And you brought it here in the courtroom and introduce it in this case.
I did, sir.
Yeah. A gun that couldn't even fire the bullet that killed Paul, right?
It did not fire the rounds that was located at the scene.
Right. In fact, none of the shotguns that you brought yesterday, according to the ballistic report, your lab analysis, fired the shots that killed Paul, correct?
I do not have the lab report in front of me.
Well, you certainly know that after June 8th, SLED was diving in ponds and waterways looking for the murder weapons.
Let me know if you think Jim Griffin
Isn't that
or
correct?
Dick.
We were diving, looking for potential evidence from the scene.
Have you ever found the murder weapons, to your knowledge?
Here's the punchline.
That's outside the scope of his knowledge.
Objections overruled.
So he
Not
objected
that I'm aware.
that it's outside of the scope of direct. And usually you can only ask questions that are inside the scope of direct. A lot of times judges will overrule that objection so that the defense doesn't have to recall the same exact witness. Just go ahead and ask those questions now.
I'm aware of, sir.
But that was his punchline. No murder weapon.
And are you familiar with what ballistics tests were done on Buster's 300 blackout and whether that was excluded as a weapon used to kill his mother?
Again, I don't have the report in front of me, and I'm not able to testify to that, sir.
And you brought these empty turkey load, exhibit 214, I believe. Brought these into evidence, the box of turkey shells.
That is the boxes I collected, yes, sir.
And these were empty.
Yes, sir, they were.
And these were found in the trash can.
Yes, sir. They were found in a trash bag, yes, sir.
Okay. And you
I don't know why that helps the defense.
let's see. Exhibit. The other end has exhibit number. Exhibit 90 is the Browning Auto 5 Light 12 gauge, which we already talked about wouldn't even hold a 3-inch shell, but there was no shells, no ammo in the Browning weapon, which is exhibit 90 you brought to court, right?
There was no rounds in that weapon.
When you seized it on the 8th, no rounds in it, right?
That is correct, yes.
All right. The Mossberg model Ulti Mag, which is exhibit 89,
Yeah, let's keep asking this question.
you have a 12 gauge shot shell written on the outside. So there was one shot shell in this, loaded in this gun, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
And you remember if it was buckshot or birdshot?
It was black. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, it's hard to remember. All
Will you
the
be able to look at it and tell us?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Is it still loaded?
89 and ask if you can
It might be.
pull out the shot, the ammo in there and tell this jury if that's birdshot or buckshot first.
I mean, personally, I have a shotgun at home for home defense, and got birdshot and buckshot. It's not loaded. You should shake it. Pretty easy to tell.
It is a Browning 12 gauge, 3.5-inch Magnum, 2 1/4, number 7 and 9.
And that's for hunting turkeys, right?
That is my understanding, yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Put it back in there.
Calls for speculation. Good object on that. Throw the defense off a little bit, prosecution.
This end is closer.
That was a long way of making the joke.
This one here. Good, you got it on. That's-
You guys
There we go.
are asking too many questions to make one
Yes.
point.
So in the Mossberg, there's one bird shot. Now, the Benelli Super Black Eagle 3 had 2 unfired shot shells according to your notes on the box. And this is Exhibit 91, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And do you recall whether any of these is bird shot, buck shot? Do you remember?
I would have to look at them again, sir.
All right.
Oh, no. Here we go. 2 times. We ain't got time for this.
That's Exhibit 91 for the record.
A lot of times you,
There's a black round in here that's a 3-inch number 4 pellet, and then there's a 2.25 ounce 3.5 inch with an 89 millimeter.
he does seem like a really nice guy.
And those are both turkey loads, right?
I wonder if he has any ties to it.
It could be used for turkey, yes, sir.
Well, let's just be clear, neither one of those are buckshot, correct?
No, sir.
I mean, you can use this to hunt birds with. You can hunt deer with this. Just use to hunt a person with. Interesting
And
question.
again, these were ruled out as having any involvement in the murder of Paul, right? Exhibit 91.
I can't testify to any lab reports. I don't have the lab reports
Good
inside of the scope of what
Good.
I did.
Was it correct to say, Agent Croft, that you did not find any guns loaded in the gun room or anywhere at Moselle that had a bird shot and a buck shot loaded at the same time?
The only weapons I've recovered are the weapons that are there with the rounds that we have just looked at. Yes, sir.
And if you or another agent in your presence made a representation that we found in the gun room a gun with similar loads as that we found at the crime scene, that would be an incorrect statement, would it?
That's it.
I don't think it would be incorrect to say that guns were loaded in a similar fashion using 2 different types of ammunition, 2 different loads.
Really, just ask, is this the murder weapon?
Well, there's no buckshot
Is this the murder
in
weapon?
any of the
Nope.
the 2 guns that you found loaded, correct?
Not when we collected them, no, sir.
So where is the murder weapon?
And the turkey loads or the bird loads that we just looked at, those the pellets in those are lead, are they not?
I would have to look at the actual box that it came in or the pellets that are in it. Some of them are steel. I'm not sure.
No.
So do you know the difference between steel and lead?
Do I know the difference?
Yeah. And what's the difference? Why would you have steel versus lead?
Steel shot is used a lot in waterfowl hunting, that type of stuff. Lead shot is used for normal everyday
Yeah, Bonnie, I'm not sure exactly why.
rabbit, squirrel, dove.
They didn't take all the guns from the house.
Well, we do have some boxes here, 214. Can you tell us whether this is lead or steel?
They might have just taken some that they thought might be related, or only the loaded ones, or something like that.
The Winchester 12 gauge shot lock lead is a turkey load, number 4. The Browning box, I do not see it indicated on the box what the ball is or the pellets are.
Well, let me ask you, is there a turkey on the face of that box?
Yeah, there were a lot
There
of
is a turkey on the face of the box, yes, sir.
things that no evidence. I'm not sure exactly.
Turkey, a waterfowl bird or land bird?
Turkey is a land bird, sir.
These questions. There is a lot of ammo. We live on a huge ranch. It's ginormous.
And the other box is the same on Federal. It's got a turkey on the front.
All right.
Thank goodness.
So those 3 boxes look like they're turkey loads, right?
That's what it appears.
Okay.
You think the jury's bored of?
Did you find any waterfowl shell boxes
This is how they got to start their morning.
at Moselle on June 8th?
I did not collect any waterfowl shell boxes from Moselle.
Did you collect any waterfowl unfired shotgun, 12-gauge shotgun shells at Moselle on June the 8th?
Not that I'm aware of, sir.
Have you ever collected unfired shotgun shells from waterfowl at Moselle in part of this investigation?
I do not recall collecting any waterfowl shot.
So he's hitting on there's no
Are you
evidence
aware, sir,
of a weapon or
that
ammo.
the shot that blew Paul Murdaugh's head off was Winchester dry lock, steel waterfowl, 12-gauge ammunition?
I mean, if it was cool and collected, Alex would have hit all that.
I was aware that the pellets were steel.
Well, you can look at the outside of the spent shell casing and see that it's Winchester dry lock, correct?
He really does stay cool.
If I had the shell casing, yes, sir, I can see it.
Cool, calm,
And you know that to be a waterfowl, a duck load, correct?
I know that it's primarily used for duck load,
I
yes.
wonder how many times he's testified.
And you know that's what killed Paul Murdaugh.
Looks like a pro.
I do know that it was steel shot.
And you didn't find any similar ammunition at Moselle on June the 8th or any time after that, correct?
Punchline.
I did not, sir.
No ammo that he.
Now, you were showing pictures of the gun room and a lot of,
I wonder where
and I
Alex
think you testified there were some 25 guns and gun racks.
found these attorneys.
It's roughly 20 to 25 guns.
And this is 1,700 acres of hunting land.
Yes, sir.
And I mean, did it shock you to see that many guns? And they were all hunting guns, were they not?
It did not shock me to see that many hunting guns.
That's
And a lot of people in Hampton, Colleton, this part of low country, when they hunt with those types of guns. Isn't that correct?
this line of questions.
Yes, sir.
And nothing, you didn't find anything unusual about the number of guns they had in their house, right?
I did not, sir.
Thank you. Now, you mentioned that you know something about the injection pattern of the 300 blackout. You remember testifying about that?
I remember testifying that it ejects to the right and slightly backwards.
What is he doing?
And I'm gonna let you take it out. I'm a city boy.
May I stand?
I'm a
Yeah,
city.
yes,
I
sir,
don't know if
please.
that's good to admit. And
Do you mind, y'all? Good stuff. Thank you.
sounds like it's not good to be a city boy.
So if you could, while you're standing, if you could just step down and point the gun at that door, and hopefully no one comes through, and
Hopefully, no.
show the jury the direction that the shells would go.
Pointed at it.
Pointed up further.
Well, that would be great.
Great.
That's probably safer.
And
Told you, I'm
yeah,
a city boy.
The rounds would be ejected from this side across would be my right shoulder.
Okay.
why don't you just use
And so,
not the actual gun?
and this is semi-automatic, I mean, you have to pull the trigger each time, is that right?
That is correct, sir.
And every time you pull the trigger, it shoots a shell, ejects off toward your right shoulder, toward the rear, right?
As long as there's ammunition in the magazine.
And how far does it go before it lands, roughly?
I can't answer that, sir.
Foot, 2 feet, 3 feet?
I can't testify to how far an ejected shell is going to expend from the
Okay.
weapon.
That's fine. Can you put it back, please?
Yes, sir.
What way you have it up, when you point to the jury,
I'm
I
out.
think they saw it before, let's just be clear. the thermal scope. Can you point that out?
This would be this item here.
And you've got to charge that, right? That's sort of you've got to plug it in, battery operated of some sort.
It would have some sort of power. I don't know if it's a rechargeable
You're right,
battery
Bonnie.
or
No
batteries that has to be
murder
recharged.
weapon.
Okay.
And that's what they're trying to hit
And the
on.
thermal scope is for hunting at night, is that right?
It
No
can be
mur-
used for hunting at night, yes, sir.
No murder
A
weapon.
regular scope
To
is
pick
kind of,
up infrared.
No ammo.
It's heat sensitive.
kind of hard to hunt at night with a regular scope
Do you think that
because it doesn't
fact
pick
that
up.
there's no-
Scope in a
infrared heat.
light would work, but this is also used.
you think that the fact that there's no murder weapon
All right,
is
thank
good or bad?
Yes, sir.
Could be seen as Alex got rid of the murder weapon. Got rid of the murder weapon, got rid of the ammo.
Agent Croft, I'm gonna show you what went into evidence yesterday is Defendant's Exhibit 29.
Yes, they try to
And
really
Can
make
you-
that point.
can you see it from up there?
Yes, sir, I can.
And these, like marker 7, 5, 6, I'll just, it's identified in the legend over here, but these are 300 blackout shell casings. Do you understand that to be the case?
I don't see marker 5 on the printout on the left-hand side there.
Yeah, Alex's son.
Well, you're right, it's not on. 1, 2. Well, let's just follow along. If these are in fact shell casings, from what you just described to the jury, the ejection path of the 300 blackout, where would the person shooting the gun be standing in relation to these markers?
Your Honor,
6,
out of
5, 6, and 7.
Objection, not qualified as an expert.
objections overruled.
Oh.
The, if 7, 5, and 6 are shell casings, that it would be likely that the shooter would be to the upper side of those rounds.
Somewhere near this line in that area?
Great take.
I
on
can't
it.
testify to that line or any kind of angle of that line, no, sir.
It is
I
definitely a
understand,
hard
but
case
it would be on the side of the line. It'd be up in here somewhere, right?
without a murder weapon.
It would be on the left-hand side of where those numbers are. It would be likely that the shooter would be on the left-hand side of where those numbers are if you're looking at it from where I'm sitting.
The shooter be on the left-hand side of these numbers and a little forward of these numbers. Is that right?
I can't say because I'm not sure if the ejection hit something on the way out or
Good response.
if there was an obstruction on the ejection. I don't know. I can't testify to how far they would go. I just know that a normal 300 ejects to the right and slightly backwards.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
The prosecution tries to tell one story, and then on cross directly after, the defense tries to tell a
you were
totally
at-
different story.
You were at Moselle on the 8th. I think we've established that.
Like Bonnie, you're referring
And
to.
did you go back on the 13th?
I did, sir.
Whoever's story
And
is
did you go,
most
you went to the house on the 13th as well?
I did, sir.
believable.
And we saw body cam from where you're picking up shell casings around the side door, 300 blackout shell casings around the side door. And I think, was that the 8th when you got the shell casing next to the?
That was around 2:00 on the 8th, a little after 2.
Now, jury will have the video if they want to see it, but as you're standing out there, you can see the rooftops of the shed building and some other structures down at the kennels where the murders took place. You remember, you could see the rooftops?
I would think you could see the rooftops.
But that's all you could see, correct? You couldn't see sled agents working around down there by the dog kennels.
No, sir, there's planted pines between the residents and the kennels.
So they're still
So the
telling
fact of the
stories.
matter is, you can't see people at the dog kennels from the house based on your personal observations. Is that
There
correct?
was a
From where I
shooter
was standing, no, sir.
from outside.
Now, you also testified about the location of Maggie's phone, how it was found.
Yes, sir.
Did you go out there when it was located?
Yes, sir, I did.
You recall how it was located?
Yes, sir, I do.
How was it located?
We sent information to the phone company for a ping. The ping was actually 20-something hundred meters, which is a long ways. We then learned that she had Find My iPhone on her phone. One of the family members assisted with locating that phone, getting a better location on the phone, and we were ultimately able to find it.
So you found the phone, Maggie's phone, by family member using Find My iPhone.
And I think it was John Marvin is the one that assisted us with that.
And do you think John Marvin was using Buster's phone to do that?
I don't have a clue what he was using.
Yeah, Bonnie. There's a
And then when the phone was collected,
there's a long story behind it
You-
too.
provided the
Yes,
password. Remember, you testified the password was provided.
We were provided the PIN to open the phone. Yes, sir.
So that's showing.
Are you aware that Alec Murdaugh provided the PIN to SLED so they could open Maggie's phone?
Again, I don't know where the passcode or PIN came from, but we were provided a PIN.
Do you know what a Faraday bag is?
Yes, sir, I do.
Did anyone have a Faraday bag?
I did not have a Faraday bag that day.
What's the purpose of a Faraday bag?
To prevent any tampering from outside sources once the cell phone is collected.
And you can put the cell phone inside a Faraday bag so it can't hit Wi-Fi, cell phone towers.
Again, it prevents any tampering from outside to prevent anybody from being able to communicate with the phone.
Interesting.
It
From any
helps.
outside sources.
It's a tool to secure the evidence to prevent tampering.
It is one.
Inadvertent or intentional tampering, right?
Yes, sir, it is one tool that can be used.
And with Maggie's phone put in a Faraday bag when it was seized on the side of Moselle Road.
No, it was not.
It's a lot of
Did anyone ask?
lawyers
Or
walk around.
bring up the fact that, hey, maybe we should get a Faraday bag before we move this phone?
While they're
I did not ask,
asking questions.
Anybody ask in your presence?
not that I'm aware of.
Going to the next.
Now, on June 8th, you were briefed and you were advised that Alec found his wife and son murdered. He was the one that discovered them, correct?
Yes, sir.
And on June 8th, you knew that he was Maggie's husband, Paul's father, immediate family, correct?
Yes, sir.
And as part of your longtime experience investigating crimes, murders in particular, someone who finds the bodies and is related to the victims is always going to be looked at. Is that fair?
That's a good question.
That would be a fair statement, sir.
And y'all were looking at Alex on the 8th. SLED was, correct?
Yes, sir.
And would you have a label? Was he person of interest or suspect on the 8th?
We were looking at Alec being the one that found the deceased, being the husband, the father, in an attempt to get Mr. Alec out of that immediate circle.
And you've described this investigative circle. So you draw a circle around potential persons of interest. And Alex was in that circle, correct?
We don't draw a circle around any individual person. We work with the crime scene, which is what we consider the circle. And we work from our way inside out in order to find any potential suspects, identify suspects, clear individuals. So we start with the small circle.
And the one they found
So
the
when you
body
started with the small circle, although you don't
Obviously.
draw it, I mean, it's a sort of an investigative
going to be
mental
investigated.
tool. Who was the person in the small circle?
We had Miss Maggie was in the crime scene, Paul was in the crime scene, and Alec was in the crime scene.
And you remember that on the morning of the 8th, there were media reports that Alec was a person of interest in the murder of his wife and son. Do you remember that being public knowledge?
I try to avoid the media in any investigation
Good response.
because I don't want to be influenced by anything that's said.
But that didn't really answer the
And what do you recall SLED putting out a press release on the morning of the 8th? That the public need not be alarmed.
I do not recall any press release being put out by SLED.
They didn't
Never.
arrest him long after.
Well, the point being, on the 8th, there was a circle, and it was only around Alec. He was the only living and breathing person in the circle. Is that correct?
That is the only person that we could place in the circle at that time.
And on the 8th,
It's a good response.
SLED knew that,
Yeah,
from what
Money
interviews
guy.
with Alec,
before I could say it.
that he said he left Moselle shortly after 9 p.m., went to visit his mother in Alameda, stayed for a while, and came back. SLED, and you were aware of that fact.
I am aware of that, yes, sir.
Did anybody at SLED ever, on the morning of the 8th, hightail it over to Alameda and search the house for any evidence whatsoever?
I did not go to Alameda and search the house on the 8th.
Are you aware of anyone
I feel like
ever
Jim's
going
doing
to Alameda to
better
search the
job.
house until sometime in September of 2021?
better
There
job
was a
than
number of agents out working. I'm not sure what the other agents did.
Dick. Good response. He's doing a better job than Dick. He's telling a better story.
Wouldn't it have been a good idea to go to Alameda on the morning of the 8th, where the guy in the circle says he was, right?
I did not go, and I can't testify to what other agents did.
Well, you've been working this investigation. You the lead case agent?
No, sir, I'm not.
Who's the lead case agent?
David Owen.
Now, every interview that Alec Murdaugh gave, you participated in, right?
I did, sir.
So were you working, sort of Agent Owen's right-hand man in this investigation?
I was assigned by the captain to assist Agent Owens.
So it's fair that you knew daily developments as the investigation progressed, right?
We had briefings with each other on the case. Yes, sir.
And you knew that at no point in time, in June, July, August, anyone went over to Alameda, searched the house, searched the property for any dirty clothes or any murder weapons.
I know that I did not go,
That's all you
and
need.
I'm not sure what the other agents in the investigative circle had done.
All you need is right there.
Well, if you went over there, if you had gone over there on the morning of the 8th, scoured the place and not find anything, that would sort of help nudge Alec outside this investigative circle, would it
Oh,
not?
again, Jim
I
is.
can't testify to what ifs, sir.
Telling you
I
something.
did not go.
I can't testify to what ifs.
Okay.
That's a good response. I'm sure he's testified hundreds of times.
On the 8th, you were asked to point out, who's that person? Who's that person? Who's that person? That's Ronnie Crosby. He's a lawyer. That's Mark Ball. He's a lawyer. That's Lee Cope. He's a lawyer. You remember that testimony?
I do, sir.
Now, Alec wasn't lawyering up on the 8th. Those were his friends who came over to help him. Correct?
They were given counsel to Alec as far as what we were doing. They were making phone calls
It's a good
to his
question.
counsel.
But let me know in the
That was the
comments
instruction which we gave.
if you think that hiring a
We were given-
lawyer.
And
Makes
they
you
were
look guilty.
assisting you, as you saw on the body cam, go through the evidence that you ended up seizing in the gun room, right?
They pointed out some items that they had concerns about.
Did you find that their efforts were obstructing your investigation?
Good question.
They didn't obstruct our search within that gun room, no, sir.
As long as you know the answer to that question.
Now, you went back, I think, on June 13th, is that correct?
Yes, sir, we did.
And remind me, what was the purpose of the search on June 13th?
Search on June 13th was a follow-up search of the residence. I would have to see the search warrant, actual search warrant, to see what items was being sought at that time.
So he's trying to, right before this, he was trying to make it seem like just because he had lawyers, and even if he was represented, does that make him look guilty? Does it make him look like he did it? And it's not supposed to. I mean, if I was ever in trouble, hope never to be in this situation, but if I was ever in this situation, I would definitely, one of the first things I would do is hire a lawyer. And so the defense is trying to point out that just because he had some friends and they were lawyers doesn't mean he's guilty. But let me know in the comments if you think that just because he hired a lawyer, or even if he had lawyers around, if that makes him look guilty.
Are you testifying that you had to get a search warrant on the 13th?
Search warrant or consent, I'm not sure. I don't know what everything that was being looked for at that time.
Well, in fact, Alec Murdaugh gave consent anytime he was asked by SLED if they could go on the property, right?
My understanding is consent was obtained each time.
And so there was no search warrant on the 13th, was there? Agent Crone?
I would have to see our legal grounds for being there, so whether it was consent or search warrant.
So he was
I
being
do
very
not know.
cooperative.
Right. And you don't need a search warrant if there's consent.
No, sir, you do not.
He could have
And,
played that up a little more, that there was
And in
consent.
this interview, this search, you've seized Exhibit 151, which is, hand it to you. That's 300 blackout clip. Is that right?
It's a magazine with 300 blackout ammunition, yes, sir.
And that was found where?
Collected from a black Ford F-150.
On the property. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
And I think you testified it was found on the floorboard of the truck. Is that right?
I didn't testify to where it was found, no, sir.
Okay, do you know where it was found?
No, sir.
Did
Just
you
a black Ford F-150.
Did you find it?
No, sir, I did not.
Or
Great
was
thing
this
to point
provided
out.
to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now,
What could they have done at
the
the
jury
crime
heard
scene?
this videotape interview of Alec on June 10th, where he told you that Paul left everything everywhere. Do you remember hearing that statement?
I do remember that, yes, sir.
And does this evidence support what Alec told you, that Paul left everything everywhere? If you found a clip, 300 blackout?
I can't testify to who had the magazine in the F-150.
Do you know who last drove that F-150?
I do not, sir.
You're right. I'd hire a lawyer.
Did you,
Just be
any
safe.
analysis done of that clip?
The way it's packaged there, it does not appear that there's been any analysis done.
You never
Any
know what.
fingerprints taken of that clip?
Again, sir, the way it's packaged, it does not appear that there was any analysis done.
Never know what law
And
enforcement officers
I
are
think there
looking
was
for.
another clip that was seized from the shelf in the gun room. I don't have that pulled up, but I think it's 150 perhaps. Did you remember seizing another clip from the gun room?
Yes, sir, there was another magazine with 300 blackout.
Any fingerprints taken from the clip seized from the shelf in the gun room?
I don't think so, sir.
Was there any analysis done of the clip taken from the shelf in the gun room?
The way I recall it being packaged yesterday, it would appear that there was no analysis performed.
Yeah, you brought.
So a lot of times on the defense, you really just obviously you poke holes in the prosecution's case, but you also show all the things that were not done. You could have done this, you could have done that, you could have done this, you could have done that. And that would have been a more complete investigation. You could have gotten other suspects in this situation. And so he's just pointing out everything that the investigating officers did not do.
You brought it to court. You want this jury to have it. Why is that?
Objection, Your Honor.
Basis for the objection.
I believe that's outside the scope of this witness's purpose here as to why it's being offered in court.
And again, usually they
Response
can.
to the objection.
You're not asking his knowledge, not anything beyond his knowledge. He could say, I don't know, or if he has a reason.
Overruled objection.
Again, a lot of times, whenever you can only ask on cross questions that were within the scope of direct, but there are exceptions, and one of those exceptions is so you don't have to recall them on your case in chief. So if the defense wanted to ask one question or a couple, then they would have to call that witness all over again, get them back on the stand in the defense's case in chief, which won't happen until after the prosecution rests. There we go.
You repeat the question,
Yeah.
please, sir?
Do you know why you were asked to bring those clips here to court and put them in evidence before this jury?
I do not, sir.
Cop stories
You also
are
did a search of the shooting range. And
good.
I couldn't go through my notes, and I don't have a date. Was that on the 13th or a different day?
I have many stories from being a prosecutor.
I'm not sure if it's the 13th or the 16th.
16th? I think you may be right.
One of those stories is
Either way, again,
a lady faking
that was a
cancer.
consent search, right? You didn't have a search warrant for that.
We did get consent for that, yes, sir.
And the jury saw the video. We're not going to belabor that again, but there was a shooting house, if you will, with a chair and a thing you would rest a gun on. And we saw you picking up a lot of shell casings, right?
Yes, sir.
And the shell casings you were picking up were the 300 blackout spent shell casings, cartridges, right?
That is correct, sir.
But there was a lot of brass in there that were not 300 blackout cartridges. Right?
There was additional brass that was not 300, yes, sir.
Now, we didn't get a good look. If you're sitting in that chair in that shooting house downrange, do you remember what was on the other end of 100 yards or so away? Do you remember what was on the other end?
I do not recall what's back on that end, no, sir. Target of some sort.
Are you aware there's a big dirt mound there?
A berm, too.
That's safe, right? You don't want to be shooting a rifle, just going down the
Doing a good
without something to stop it.
doing a
There's
good
berm
cross.
there to stop
It was
right?
going into a wooded area, yes, sir.
But there was a
Dirt
berm.
mound. There was a dirt mound.
Jim's doing a better job than
There
Dick
was a target and then a dirt mound behind it.
at this point.
That's correct.
Now, we saw you picking up brass. Who went down to the other end and started digging in that earthen dirt mound to find fired projectiles?
I did not go down to the other end, no, sir.
In fact, nobody at SLED went to that other end to dig out 300 blackout fired projectiles, did they?
I did not, and I don't know what the other agents did, no, sir.
Well, you're assisting Agent Owen. You're going to briefings. You didn't hear at any point in time while we should have, or we did dig out projectiles from the dirt mound.
I never heard of anyone digging out the dirt mounds, digging out brass from dirt mound.
If you had dug out projectiles from the dirt mound, that could have been sent to the ballistics lab at SLED and done a comparison to projectiles found at the crime scene, correct?
There would be a lot of elements that would go into whether it could actually be looked at or not.
Or you could certainly compare it to what was, I mean, you could take a 300 blackout, shoot it out of Buster's gun right there leaning next to you and compare it to the projectiles. You're aware that could be done at SLED, right?
Yes, sir, I am.
But it wasn't, was it?
I'm not sure what testing was done on this particular rifle to compare it to anything at the scene.
Pointing holes again.
Now, let's go to the June 10th interview. You and Agent Owens interviewed Alec in Agent Owens' SUV, sled issued vehicle on June 10th, right?
Yes, sir, we did.
And that was at Brother John Marvin's hunting lodge in Barnville or somewhere close by, right?
Yes, sir.
Something like
yet.
that.
Not yet. A lot of people were interviewed that day, right?
There was a number of interviews going on at the same time. Yes, sir.
And that was consent, correct? The interviews were consensual.
Yes, sir.
And you
Thanks
interviewed
for coming, Bonnie.
the folks being interviewed that day, not only included Alec, but they included John Marvin, his brother, his son Buster, and his other brother Randy. Is that correct?
To my recollection, yes, sir.
And when you pulled up on June the 10th, it's about, was it early afternoon it seemed like?
The timestamp should be on the video. I don't recall what time it was.
But it was a little bit like the cavalry coming, wasn't it? Because there were a lot of cars that pulled up at one time, right?
They were aware we were coming.
How many agents went?
We took agents to interview each person that was there.
You took 2 agents for each interview, right?
I think there was 2 agents for each interview, yes, sir.
And each agent came in their own car, right?
I think I may have rode with Special Agent Owen. I'm not sure if the others drove their own cars or not.
He's making it sound like it's sabotage.
And so there's at least 4,
Hanging
could have
up
been
on
more
them.
than that, cars, right?
That was probably full cars, yes, sir.
And you put each person, Randy, John Marvin, Buster, and Alec, in a separate
Right,
car
Tiffany?
all at one time.
The cavalry.
Pretty close to the same time, yes, sir. Each one got in a car with agents.
And that's a law enforcement investigative technique so that you don't want witnesses to be comparing notes, and you want to interview them in separate places, same time, and to get what's fresh on their mind without learning what another witness has said, right?
Good question.
We wanted to interview them individually, yes, sir.
And you said they knew that they were coming, but did you alert anyone that we're all going to be coming in, at least 4 cars, and we're going to interview you separately at the same time?
There was some other things that was going to take place while we were conducting the interviews. So it was arranged that they would all be at that location, and we were going to meet them there and conduct the interviews.
So defense witness trying
And
to
you
say
also
it's
had
not
a guy there to do a phone
manufactured.
extraction.
Yes, sir. Those are the other things I'm talking about.
Now, that wasn't told to Alec or John Marvin or Buster or Randy before sled rolled in on the 8th at John Marvin's hunting lodge, right?
It's my understanding that they knew we were coming and that we were going to request the phone analysis be done.
You think someone when sled would have told Alec ahead of time, told John Marvin ahead of time that we're going, when we get there, be sure not to erase anything off your phone because we're going to download it?
I didn't set the meeting up. I went with Agent Owen to conduct the interview.
So, but
And after this, we're going to talk
one of
about
the first things you did in the interview was you and Agent Owen was ask Alec if he would give over his phone so that it could be extracted.
the confession.
That was one of the first things we asked for.
And that extraction was done, by another agent who came in a separate vehicle, I assume. Is that right?
He's not an agent with the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, no, sir.
Okay. He was investigator with 14th Circuit Solicitor's Office,
That's my understanding of his job title, yes, sir.
and that would be Investigator Hightower. Is that who did that?
That is my understanding, yes, sir.
And during the interview, you also, at the end of the interview, you got a buccal swab from Alec, right?
I did, sir.
To get
You got a
DNA.
buccal swab from, not you, but everybody who was interviewed gave buccal swabs, meaning John Marvin, Randy.
And he's
Buster,
hyping it
and
up
Alec.
because it was
Right.
consensual.
I know that Alec, we secured a buckle from Alec. I'm pretty sure that there was one collected from Buster. I'm not sure about John Marvin and Randy.
Now, yesterday, we listened to the entire video interview with Alec, and it ran for almost an hour, could have been longer, but you sat on the stand and heard that, right?
Yes, sir, I did.
And at various points in time, you were asked, what did he just tell you? Did he just tell you?
And this is the confession, and we're going to talk about it and listen to it after this testimony. But he's crossing him on this confession, and so let's see what he has to say.
This? Do you remember that?
I do, sir.
And then you get to one point in the interview where you're asked, what did he just say after you said it must be tormenting? And you testified that Alex said on the video captured by audio that it was so bad, I did him so bad. That's what you testified to yesterday.
Yes, sir, that is what I testified to.
Now, are you 100% confident that Alex said, I did him so bad, rather than they did him so bad?
I'm 100% confident in what I heard and I interpreted him as saying.
Good response.
But you would agree that this jury can hear the same thing you heard on June the 10th by playing what was captured on the body cam or the recording equipment in Agent Owen's car, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, when you heard what you said, you're confident what you heard, that he said, I did him so bad. What'd you do in response to that?
I made a mental note of it. Again, we were still in the early stages of investigation. It was more of an information gathering from Mr. Alec. And we did not have information at that point, to my opinion, to challenge Mr. Alec on any of his statements.
Your Honor, let me.
So what he's doing right here is he's trying to show that if they really thought that that's what Alex said, then they would have done much more than just take a mental note. And I'm next to a fire station, but it sounds like they're next to a fire station as well.
So Alec Murdaugh was the one and only in this circle on June the 10th.
I don't think it's me.
You're in the car with him. And according to your testimony, he says, I did him so bad.
That is what I understood him to say. Yes, sir.
And yet you just said you took a mental note of it.
Yes, sir, I did.
Good questioning.
I mean, if the guy in the middle of the circle, the only one in the circle, says, I did him so bad,
That's very true.
isn't that a significant statement if he actually said that?
Definitely something we would follow up with.
Someone could have listened to it after and be like, "Oh, wait,
You
he
never
actually said
followed
this."
up with it, did you?
There was a third interview conducted with Mr. Alex.
There was a third interview. There was a third interview conducted on August the 11th, 2021, right?
I don't recall the exact date.
We hear about it, but you were there, right?
Yes, sir, I was.
Tell the jury, if you ask Alec Murdaugh on August 11th, 2021, what did you mean back on June 10th when you said, I did him so bad?
You think they'd ask
We
that?
didn't make it to that point, sir.
Didn't make it that point. It's not a very good answer. Gotta have a better excuse than that.
In fact, back on June 10th, after you had this,
Good line of questioning.
what you heard him say, I did him so bad, you went on to talk about funeral arrangements, whether they're going to be public or private. Isn't that right?
There was questions concerning funeral arrangements, yes, sir.
And Agent Owen says, well, Alex said he's trying to make arrangements so it wouldn't be, a lot of media there or any media there. And, the guy who just said, I did him so bad, I mean, the response to that was, they don't deserve to be there. You recall that?
Repeat that again, sir.
You
Tiffany,
recall
that's
Agent
very
Owen
true.
saying in your presence to Alec, the media did not deserve to be at Maggie and Paul's funeral.
I do recall Agent Owen saying something about the media not being there.
Definitely
Yes.
could have stopped the interview
And that was after, according to you, he said,
at that
I
time.
did him so bad.
Yes, sir.
Did you consider that to be some sort of confession on June the 10th?
Again, it was something that we were definitely going to follow up on. Yes, sir.
I would, if I was his
Getting
lawyer,
ready for your testimony yesterday,
I'd definitely stop the questioning at that point.
Excuse me.
did you review a transcript that was prepared by SLED of that interview of June 10th with Alec?
No, sir. I have never seen a transcript that was prepared for that.
Are you aware the transcript was prepared at SLED?
No, sir. I am not.
Are you hearing that the first time?
Yes, sir. I am.
Those things that he hasn't reviewed that might have helped
Well, let
him.
me ask you back on June 10th. Why didn't you ask him right then and there when he said, I did him so bad? Why didn't you ask him, what do you mean by that, Alec?
Again, it was early in the investigation. It was more of an information gathering interview, if you would call it an interview, with Mr. Alec.
Very true, Tiffany.
And we did not, at that particular time in the investigation, we did not have evidence to challenge anything that Mr. Alec would have told us.
And like you just said, it was
It was
information,
decided that we would not.
information
cross that at that
gathering.
time.
Gumshoe
I mean,
stories.
my question wasn't, why didn't
The
you challenge
cavalry.
him? My question is, why didn't you ask for clarification? Like, what are you talking about? You did him so bad.
They're coming after him.
Asking for clarification of I did him so bad would ultimately be a challenge of what he said.
So
They didn't want to challenge him.
what were the things going through your mind when you heard or misheard,
Like
I did him
Tiffany
so
said.
bad? You're like, I wasn't a good dad?
They wanted
I
to
spoiled
get
him?
as much
or I killed
information,
him?
as much
What was
information as
going through your
possible.
mental note?
There was a mental note that it was definitely something that we needed to follow up on and ask at a later time.
And the prosecution definitely coached him on how to handle this issue because the prosecution saw this as an issue.
Now, from the
Definitely
video,
prepped
it appears you're back there taking some notes.
Yes, sir.
Did you take notes?
I was writing specific stuff
Now, you
down.
mentioned you made a mental note of this, what you heard or misheard, I did him so bad, but did you make a written note of him saying that?
I don't recall if I wrote it or not, sir.
So it's possible that you're sitting there with a guy who's now been charged with murder on June 10th in the interview, the father, the only one in the circle, and he says, I did him so bad, and you can't tell the jury you even wrote it down on a piece of paper.
I don't recall if I actually made a physical note of it or not, sir.
I'm going to play that clip from State's Exhibit 243, which is in evidence. I want you to listen again with the jury.
So you're going to play it again. Are we going to hear it? Oh, yes, there is a difference. Cavalry. Gumshoe, I think I'm with you on it. It is so hard. And I'm going to tell a story of almost this exact
let's-
situation that I dealt with as
Let's
prosecutor.
play it. Please, Doug. Exhibit 243 in evidence.
It's tough.
It's just so bad. They did it so bad.
All right. Back it up and play it in real time again, Doug. Real time.
Yeah, it's so hard to hear.
Are not easy. I know it's hard. And sitting here talking today is tough.
It's just so bad. They did it so bad.
Did you hear now, they or I?
I will still testify that my hearing, I hear I.
Your Honor, we'd like
is
to play
hard.
it again at 1/3 speed to slow it
1/3
down.
speed.
It's just the same. Thank you.
Third speed, there's been no foundation laid for who's manipulating it, how it's being manipulated. I
What?
think,
Come on.
Obviously, we have it in real time, but there would have to be some additional foundation.
Overruled.
1/3
Let's hear
speed.
it in third speed. And before I play this, I was a prosecutor at Tulsa County District Attorney's Office, and we had a situation where there was a jail call, and we thought that the defendant, I wasn't the lead on the case, we thought the defendant had said something that would help us prove the case, but in fact, the jury thought, well, I think the jury thought that it was something else, and it was some minutia like this where it could be interpreted in two different ways, and it completely changes the context. And so in that situation, personally, I think the jury thought, wow, the prosecutors are overreaching. I can't believe they would try to turn this statement into that. And so it can be very dangerous in admitting a confession like this when you really don't know if it's I or they. And so, but in this case, really the prosecution didn't really have a choice. It's a confession, and they really needed to play it. If not, defense probably would have played it, and it would have looked like the prosecution was hiding some evidence from the jury. So let's listen to it on 1/3. Maybe we'll hear it.
And sitting here talking today is tough.
It's just so bad. It's so bad.
When you slow it down, it sounds like they.
Did you hear they then?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay.
He's not going to change his story.
You would agree the jury
Yeah,
gets to
this-
decide what he said on that tape. That's
This
the
is
best
fine.
evidence.
I agree that they get to hear the tape and make their own mind up as to what he said. Yes, sir.
And that's a good question to ask after that.
Thank you. That's all I have on that. Now,
Oh, he's still going.
I said the date August 11th. You said you weren't sure, but there was another interview with Alec Murdaugh came to the SLED Low Country office.
He is smart not to waver. He's
And
not
you
giving
and-
up ground.
Agent Owen sat down and interviewed him, correct?
That is correct.
Now,
And Tiffany, that's a great point.
on all these interviews that were conducted and that have been played somewhat, or body cam conversations, except for Ella, when you're doing them, do you tell the person that you're interviewing, hey, I'm going to turn the audio recorder on, you're now being recorded?
Usually they tell them.
Standard operating procedure?
We normally don't advise that we're recording those.
Oh. Wow.
And you certainly didn't advise Alec that you're recording him on any of the interviews that you conducted with Agent Owen, correct?
I never advised anyone that I was that they were
Wow.
being recorded.
That's interesting.
And this meeting that you had, were you aware that Alec was asking for the meeting?
That'd be
so
a
that
great
he could
point.
get an update on
Someone can
whether you made any progress in
Testify.
the investigation of the murder of his wife and son?
has to
I
dialect
was
as well.
aware that Alec had requested a meeting to raise some questions as to what was going on.
I mean, he wanted information as to what was going on, right?
That's my understanding, yes, sir.
But y'all had other plans for that meeting, correct?
No, sir, I'm not going to say we had other plans for that meeting. It was an interview.
Yeah, I mean, he came there he didn't go to that meeting thinking, I'm going to be interviewed. To your knowledge, did he?
To my knowledge, I don't know what his thinking was. He knew he was coming there to meet with myself and Agent Owen.
And during that interview, pretty much you made it known to him that, well, I mean, you asked him point blank, did you kill your wife and son?
He was asked that.
And made it pretty clear that, well, let me ask you, at that point in time, was he full bore suspect in your murder investigation?
He was still a person of interest. There was some questions that we had regarding information that we had obtained that only he could answer.
Yes, they would have to produce that in
And
discovery,
did he answer
especially
questions that you asked?
if they're going to use it in trial.
Yes, sir.
Definitely would have to. The state definitely cannot
And then
hide
at
the
the end
ball.
of that interview, he asked you to meet with Maggie's mom and dad, Mr. and Ms. Brandstetter,
Great
and
question.
her family, correct?
I think that was the end of the second interview, not the third interview.
All right. Well, shortly after that, shortly after that third interview with Alec, which we'll get the date in the record eventually. A few days later, you and Agent Owen went and met with Maggie's mom and dad, sister and brother-in-law, and nieces, correct?
That is correct.
And
They definitely could have chosen not to do more audio.
part of
That is
that
correct.
interview,
They could have
well,
played it
that
safe
interview was recorded, right?
and said, let's just
The
make sure
interview
not.
With the
Brandstetters?
Yes.
Yes, sir. It was audio recorded.
Did you tell them you were recording?
We did not.
And
I don't think. I did not tell them.
And part of the interview was conducted as part of your investigation to get information to assist you in next steps, correct?
The interview was a combination interview. It was to share information and also to gather information concerning family dynamics. Yes, sir.
In that interview, you and/or Agent Owen told the Brandstetters and the Proctors that Alec is in this circle of investigation, correct?
It was no secret that Alec was in that circle at that point. No, sir.
And that you also told them he's the only one that you've identified in the circle, correct?
I don't recall saying he's the only one in that circle.
Well, did you identify for the Brandstetters or the Proctors any other people in the circle?
Yeah,
They
he had-
particularly asked about Alex, so I don't recall giving them any other names that was being looked at.
Yeah.
In early August of 2021, was there anybody else in the circle that your SLED was focused on?
Again, sir, at that particular date, I'm not sure who all was still within that circle.
They're just trying to show that he was the only suspect. They went after the easy target, or what they see to be the easy target, or the only one they know of.
And during this interview, Maggie's mother, Miss Kennedy Brandstetter, her father, Mr. Terry Brandstetter, her sister, Marion Proctor, and brother-in-law, Bart, and their children described for y'all their observations of Alex's relationship with Maggie and Paul, correct?
From their observation of their relationship, yes, sir.
And that was, you were asking that as part of your investigative tool and getting
Yes, sir,
information.
that's correct.
And they reported to you that Alec had a loving relationship with Maggie and Paul, correct?
Rule 801 and 802.
Pardon?
Objection, Rule 801 and 802.
Response.
It's not being offered for the matter asserted, Your Honors.
So that's hearsay.
Response to that.
Objection sustained.
Oh, there's so many exceptions to hearsay. Hearsay is an out-of-court statement offered for the truth of the matter.
Were you
asserted.
given that information in that interview? Did they identify other people who had warned Maggie that word on the street in Hampton that there was some risk to her family's safety resulting from the boat?
Usually when you object, you should say hearsay, not 801.
I don't
802.
recall any specific information concerning warning of threats or of any nature. No, sir, I don't recall that.
You don't recall being provided the name Barbara Mixon?
I do recall being provided names of those that may have information, but as far as specific information, I do not recall any specific information that was shared by the Brandstetters.
You know whether Ms. Mixon was ever interviewed following your meeting with the Brandstetters?
I know I never interviewed Ms. Mixon.
Were you given information about Ms. Keena Traherne of a similar nature?
Again, I never interviewed Ms. Traherne, if her name was given, no, sir.
1 minute, Your Honor, ma'am.
check to see what I left.
Yeah, the judge has been very patient and kind throughout this whole. But no, he is not very verbal. He lets the attorneys do a lot of the work, and if he needs to step in, he does, which is honestly a sign of a good judge. The judges need to be coaching one side or the other. I've seen that happen. And usually when you have more than one attorney, towards the end of questioning, you'll walk over to your other co-counsel and see if they have any more questions that they think you should ask. But I have no idea what Dick is saying right now or what he's doing with his claws.
That's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
So that's all the questions.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Redirect. So that was the cross of Croft. And if you guys have any questions at all, feel free to drop them in. I don't have time to watch the entire trial, but I'm gonna pull up a summary of what happened, and you all can ask questions as we are going, and I'm more than happy to answer them. Let's see what Tiffany said. And he does step in. I loved yesterday when he said, okay, prosecution, would you like to argue this speaking objection? Yeah, you're not supposed to have a speaking objection. And sometimes the attorneys do speaking objections. And a lot of times that is strategic. You want the jury to know something else. Usually some judges allow it, a lot of judges don't. Sometimes there's strategy to that. And Gumshoe Stories, I'm thinking of the way he addresses the jury. Normally at the end of the day, you hear the judge speak to the jury a little longer than this guy does. Yeah, sometimes you can draw it out a little further. Some judges keep it pretty short. Now, at the end of the trial, he'll definitely talk to them and he'll kind of tell them, thank you. Usually they say, if you ever want to come back, if you ever want to watch my court or see how everything's done, you're more than welcome to come and join us. And from day one, he calls after them as they walk out. Don't talk to anyone about the case. Yeah, that's something they always preach to the jury. Don't talk to anyone about this case, just so that they remain unbiased. And the only evidence that they should be looking at is the evidence in their courtroom and their past experience. So they shouldn't be going home looking stuff up about this case, looking up what is a 300 blackout or anything like that. They shouldn't be doing any of that. So let me pull this up right here. So this is kind of a summary of what happened throughout the day. Obviously, we just listened to the tape. That is it is it they? That's really up in the air and for the jury to decide. And so no one gets to decide what it actually is. The jury decides for themselves. So the second witness today was Michael Anthony. I don't know how to say that last name, but he's the custodian records of Verizon Wireless. And so what he was doing was they were just using him to admit evidence, really. He's not a fact witness. He didn't investigate. They were just inputting phone records through him for the most part. The third witness was Paul David, another difficult last name, McManigal, I think. Currently a sergeant with the Charleston County Sheriff's Office. He's assigned to the U.S. Secret Service Cyber Fraud Task Force as a digital forensic examiner. And Dick led that cross-examination. And they were kind of just admitting the call logs. And he was probably talking about the investigation that they did through the phone records, because back to the Verizon guy, he's just admitting those because a investigator cannot do that. It's called a business record. And so you kind of have to lay foundation that these were kept in the ordinary course of business. And it's usually, these are documents that someone makes at the time that's relatively close. And obviously it's probably a computer that made those records. And again, let me know if you guys have any questions on these. Fourth witness, Jonathan Van Houten, currently a civilian who works for the U.S. Secret Service, former investigator with the Columbia Police Department, task force officer with the Secret Service, and they used a tool called Cellbrite to unlock Paul's phone. And so officers often use Cellbrite when they can't get into certain phones. And so it's interesting that they had to use Cellbrite for Paul's phone to get into it. And it is interesting, and this is something that you could use in your everyday life, is to use not a 4-digit code, but use at least a 6-digit code. Because as we read this, which is absolutely true, looks like it got cut off short. But based on technology at the time, Van Houten said the software could only attempt to brute force its way into the cell phone. Let me pull it up a little bigger. Its way into the phone 164 times a day, which takes time. With a 4-digit passcode, it could take 10,000 attempts and maybe 68 days. With the 6-digit code, it could take 1 million tries, which would, who knows how many days that would be. So note to you at home and to myself, make sure you have a 6-digit passcode on your phone and not a 4-digit. It's more difficult to get into. And I actually did a video that I posted today, a short, about how don't use ancestry DNA or anything like that, because actually what officers have been doing now is subpoenaing those companies for certain individuals' DNA records to try to match them at crime scenes. Very interesting. And so if you're on the fence, just don't do it. If you want to do it, go ahead and do it. I don't plan on being in a situation where they need to subpoena my DNA, but I'd rather them not have it anyways. But in this case, Alex consented to a buckle swab. I used to always say buckle swab. And so that wasn't an issue here. And I don't think there was any DNA evidence anyways, but they took a buccal swab. Van Houten said he only completed the data extraction. He did not analyze the data himself. So again, he was admitting into evidence the phone information. Then the court recessed for lunch. And usually they take about an hour recess for lunch. Fifth witness, John Bedingfield. Fortunately, we don't get a nice picture of him like we have of the other individuals. Law enforcement officer for 28 years with South Carolina Department of Natural Resources. And he also has a side business as a firearms dealer and happens to be Alex Murdaugh's second cousin. Close to them, Bedingfield was referred to previously in the trial as a person who reportedly assembled 300 blackout AR-15 style rifles for the Murdaugh family. And so the state probably thinks that this is important information to admit. Bedingfield became a registered FFL firearms dealer back in 2016. And so to make certain guns, to make certain accessories like silencer, you have to have an FFL license to do those things and to handle them. And if you do have a silencer or something like that, smartest to put it into a trust so that whenever you do pass, because we all will, just a matter of when, whoever your beneficiary is, they don't have to have an FFL because it'll be in a trust. So just good information to know at home. Bedingfield said Alex Murdaugh came to him around Christmas 2016, wanting him to assemble 2 AR-style rifles for him to give to his 2 sons to use for hunting hogs, which is common. Bedingfield recommended 300 black style for its knockdown power. And so do you think that really plays to the benefit of the prosecution, because they put it on their case in chief, or the defense, that he really had these guns made so long ago? And we'll get to the third gun that was made in a minute, because that's only 2. But do you think that plays more to the prosecution or to the defense? Because if it was so calculated and he had planned it, he might not have thought that far back about the plans. 2 firearms cost $9,188. A lot of that is the accessories that they put on it. And I don't know too much about guns, but what I do know is from my brother, Garrett. He went to gunsmithing school, actually. And so I get it osmosis from him and learning all about this stuff. I'll have to have him on here sometime. The state had him explain some details about the make of the guns. He said they discussed adding suppressors, but they were never added due to additional paperwork needed from the federal government, which was never completed, like I had mentioned. They also added thermal night vision scopes so they can hunt at night. And usually the only thing you can hunt at night is hogs or coyote. Bedingfield said he made a third version of the gun in April 2018 after Alex Murdaugh said Paul's was lost and it didn't cost as much. Maggie completed the purchase, and then the transfer was done in her name because Alex wasn't able to make it to Barnwell to pick it up that day. So interesting that they brought him on just for that purpose. And on the 6th, Tiffany said that she did Ancestry, half hoping my DNA solves some crazy crime where some third cousin gets caught. Oh no. Sixth witness, David, parentheses, Britt Dove. It's a long explanation for a name. Dove is a lieutenant in the computer crimes unit of SLED. He's a former Columbia area police officer. He was qualified expert witness. So expert witnesses, there's an extra standard. And sometimes you can do what's called a Daubert motion to try to get the witness to not testify, but the court determines if they are an expert witness. A lot of times that happens outside of the presence of a jury, but many times the jury still wants to. A lot of lawyers still ask the questions to show that he is an expert, go through their qualifications. So that would have been long and drawn out. The state spends time asking him to explain how data is extracted and all the ins and outs of what could be found. I hope they kept it pretty short because that can be tedious and boring. Like I mentioned yesterday on the stream, I do personal injury for the most part, do a little bit of criminal defense, and I was a prosecutor. We do trucking cases, and many lawyers who do trucking cases, the cases used to last 2, 3, 4 weeks for trucking cases. And now they're trying to try them in 2 days, 3 days, 4 days at most, because the attention span is so small. So you want to keep the jury active and interactive and engaged throughout the entire thing. So you don't want to just draw it out in a long process. So he was handed Maggie Murdaugh's phone to review. Looking at Maggie's home screen, he said she had app notifications on. Looking at her location services, he could see location was set to always on for Alexa and only while using for the App Store, Apple Watch, and others. Dove said in Maggie's call log, there were 5 missed calls from Alex and 2 missed calls from Buster. He said it showed the day of the week, not actual date and times. In her text, Dove said most are unread and unopened. He said he had to run a full Cellbrite physical extraction of files and reports on Maggie's phone, including logs, caches, locations, health information, and financials. And the whole hard drive was admitted into evidence. And so the jury could actually go back and spend days just looking through that since it was all admitted into evidence. And I have taken a criminal defense trial. I actually did it with my dad, and it was pretty fun because he is very good at trial. But before that, our criminal defendant let the prosecutors extract his data as well. And it is so much information. Just going through that takes so long. And I had to go through it because I didn't know what was in there. I asked my client if there's anything in there that I should be worried about, because you got to know these things, because you don't want to be surprised at trial that the prosecution brings something up and you definitely aren't prepared for it. So they could really spend tons of time going through that phone data and spending tons of time through that. It looks like that might have been the last witness. Let's refresh it to see. It said it's a live blog. Let's scroll down. 6th witness. That's the one we were on. Oh, there's a little bit more information. Whole hard drive was entered into evidence. And the jury can deliberate for days on days, and the court will keep ordering food. He might tell the jury to eventually bring their own food. But so some of the text, let's look at the call log. 5 missed calls from Alex. So do you think that is good or bad for the prosecution, or good or bad for Alex? Time not shared in court. Call completed with Marion. 7:50 p.m. The last outgoing and or answered call Maggie made. It was to Barbara. It lasted 2 minutes and 46 seconds. 9:04 missed call from Alex. 9:06. 9:06. All from Alex. 9:45 and 10:03. In her text from that day, Dove said most are unread or unopened. 8:31 p.m. Read status in a group text to several members of the Murdaugh family. John Marvin Murdaugh texts, I plan to go over to visit Dad tomorrow afternoon. Is anyone else preparing to go? He's referring to their father, Randolph Murdaugh, third's failing health. 8:49, Lynn G texts the same group saying she's in court all week. This is the last read message on Maggie's phone, was at 8:49. 9:08 from Alex, unread status text says, going to check on M, be right back. So do you think Alex was texting that just to set himself up to look like, yeah, it wasn't me? Or do you think he really didn't do it, just from this evidence right here? And Tiffany says, good for prosecution, will be interesting to see cross. Yeah, so Tiffany, you might have seen the whole thing. I didn't get to watch much today, so looks like, I guess they didn't get to cross on this witness. 9:34 unread status from Paul's friend Rogan Gibson. Tell Paul to call me. 9:47, which is interesting. Did Alex tell Paul Rogan, or who is it, Rogan, to text her that? 9:47 unread status, obviously from Alex. Call me, babe. Do you think he also sent that? Very interesting. Under phone events on June 7th, 2021. Here's another phone event. 8:17, her phone was unplugged from charger. 8:30, visited the website Poshmark, buy and sell fashions. Dove believes it was open in the background. 8:49, 26 seconds. Start time of display on, which refers to it being lit up, likely due to text coming in. Reasons could include the receipt of notification from message, call, apps. Doesn't have to be associated with human interaction. 8:49, 27 seconds. It was unlocked and a text message from 8:31 was read. An orientation changed was also logged, which Dove said was most likely due to human action, but there's no way to determine who is holding the phone. And reading through this, it is crazy to know what type of evidence that they can get from your cell phone. It is a tracker. 8:49, 31 seconds, the phone was locked. The phone stayed locked from this time until the next day, June 8th, 1:10 p.m., which is when SLED finds it. 8:53, end time for orientation change from landscape to portrait. So someone must have been moving it, I guess. The camera activated for 1 second in the background, likely activated when attempting to find a face for biometric unlock. Dove said the phone didn't record what the camera was looking at. If it had seen Maggie's face, he believes it would have unlocked, which is interesting. So I guess what the testimony was that they're getting at is, if it really was Maggie that unlocked it, it probably would have been unlocked. And so someone else was handling her phone. 8:55, phone display turns off. No more steps are logged. 9:06, orientation changed again to portrait. Dove believes that happened due to human action, like someone lifting it. This is the same time her phone receives an incoming call from Alex, which was not answered. Interesting. Exact same time. 9:06, end of portrait mode recorded. No more in orientation changes after this. Starting at 9:31, the display comes on and off a few times. There was no obvious cause for this. Well, interesting. Between 8:17 and 8:18, Maggie's phone records a total of 38 steps. Dove said the steps phone records isn't always accurate. Instead of exact steps, this number tells him this phone was on someone moving. An additional 44 steps were logged between 8:30 and 8:33, and 59 steps were logged from 8:53 and 8:55. Note, in pretrial, the state said Maggie's time of death was between 8:49 and 8:53. So that's very interesting and where it lines up in this. So looks like they'll start on cross at the beginning of the day tomorrow morning. Very interesting evidence that is coming in. Kind of started a little slow, but it seems like the prosecution is starting to tell a story, which is definitely what you want to do. So again, be thinking of any questions that you have. I will try to get on tomorrow, but I don't think I can. I think I have something. So I'll try to get on Thursday, and I'll try to get Attorney Ryan on Thursday, as he was commenting earlier. So everyone, Tiffany, Gumshoe Stories, everyone that joined us tonight, thank you. Appreciate it. And always good talking to you all and answering any questions that you do have. So hope you guys have an enjoyable night, and we will keep following this on the next live. See you guys.